Stop that. Stop that. Stop that. I hear him chat to the noise. Move too quick, can't stop for the talking. I hear him chat with the walking. Just too sharp with the prize. White girls better tell me I'm awesome. Yeah, hot like fire on the pan. If you wanna touch my please use caution. Cold like 0 degrees. I'm out the cage, gotta let out the beast. Revolutionary, gotta let out the streets. Locked in the cage, I'ma let out the sheets. You came for one month, forget my peace. You take the west, I'll take on the east. I'ma put them in the cage, never let out the. I hear him chat to the noise. Move too quick, can't stop for the talking. I hear him chat with the boys. Man so tough, but man's keep walking. Yeah, just too sharp with the prize. White girls better tell me I'm awesome. Yeah, hot like fire on the pan. If you wanna touch my please use caution. Stop that. Stop that. Stop that.
What a magical NBA night last night with just a few games, Stugotz.
Yep.
With just a handful of games. Greg Popovich with Wembanyama was willing to say of Embiid, we're going to hammer his ass before the game. Embiid goes off for 70, and I don't think it's top 2 in interesting things that I saw last night in basketball. Lucy is suffering her punishment. What punishment is this, Lucy? You look a bit like Cyndi Lauper. Is that a Cyndi Lauper punishment?
I am 80s today, and you know what? Suffering, not the right word. I love this outfit. I wish we could dress like this all the time. I love this look. I mean, I can, but I couldn't, walk down the street and feel
It's your
comfortable.
choice, yeah.
But I love it. I can't wait for this look to come back in style because I'm having so much fun today.
There's been a couple punishments, Dan, where you walk in and it's very close to the line where you don't know if you should ask someone if they're in a costume or if they're just dressed for the day. And today was one of those days where I was like, so she's like 80s. And I'm like, okay, is it a punishment or do you just have these things?
Tony's walked in with a couple get-ups that I'm like, I have to check the calendar.
I mean, but some days he just dresses as though he's punished anyways.
Yeah,
and
he's
it's
never
just,
punished.
Yeah.
Like when I did Rocky.
You haven't suffered enough punishments. I am told that Stugotz later this week will do the Larry Bird short shorts.
He will. I'm so excited for it.
will?
We've got the towel and the blonde wig and all ready for Mike's worst nightmare.
Shot for your life. I mean,
Mike finds all of this unpleasant. But let me talk about some of the things that happened last night. Because, again, Greg Popovich, you do not see this very often. I don't know why he would wish this on Wembanyama. Trying to teach the young fella early because Embiid is a man-child who does this to Jokic. Like, he can do it against anybody, and he's hell-bent, Stugotz, on winning a title. He's like, don't care about the 70. M. Night Shyamalan is coming out and saying, what a joy to watch Embiid play joyously, to play like a child, to enjoy himself. And Embiid goes for 70, but he wants the championship this year. He is tired of, yeah, you're a great player, but what about the playoffs? And to throw Wembanyama into that fire, I don't know if Wembanyama's turned 20 yet or not, and then have Embiid go for 70, while in Minnesota, the more interesting game of the night. All of a sudden, Anthony Edwards, for some reason, is an afterthought. Minnesota has decided to go with Karl Anthony Towns when the reputation that Karl Anthony Towns has, no matter how revolutionary he is as an inside-outside player, is that dude soft and he's a loser. Like, that's the reputation. I'm not saying that's fair. I would not do that to him, but that's how he's looked at because of what happened in that Jimmy Butler practice.
yes, it's all his fault. Yeah.
I'm not saying that. That's not how I look at him. I look at him and I'm like, what a mutant. I can't believe that person can do those things. But I think everyone listening to this who knows basketball says you cannot win if that is your number one player for reasons that don't have very much to do with how good he is at basketball.
You know, he and Wilt are I believe, the only players to score 60 or more in a game twice at the center position. Like, that's it. Karl Anthony Towns and Wilt Chamberlain.
I have seen very few players ever like him. He's been like this since he was a freshman in college, and I'm floored by his skill set. But the sport requires something else, Stugotz, a suffering that Embiid has learned over the last few years that Karl Anthony Towns hasn't yet done. But Anthony Edwards has to be the number one. In spirit on that team, he's got to be the guy who leads them.
He does. He is that guy. I feel like he is that guy. Stephen A. compared him to Michael Jordan and Kobe Bryant. A little early for that.
No, but Stugotz, everyone's doing that. Everyone sees how young he is, how good he is, and they see Wade and Jordan and everything else, and they're saying that's the player that's the future of the league. But yesterday he was not. Everything in Minnesota, because they were playing Charlotte, because Charlotte stinks, Charlotte's got 9 wins, because Charlotte was down 18 points in that game, was centered around let's get Karl Anthony Towns his points. But Stugotz, they gave up the 18-point lead. This is one of the best teams in the league when Edwards leads them, not Karl Anthony Towns.
Soft.
When Edwards leads them and Gobert is playing defense, that team can beat anybody and needs to learn the things that need to be learned about suffering and losing to go deep in the playoffs in that sport. But let's just check out some of the calls. The Hornets announcers are watching Karl Anthony Towns do this and listen to what it is that they're describing.
38. No!
That's how you call it.
That's
man.
Karl Anthony Towns from 30 feet. I want to play that again just so that is exactly how you call all of that. Play that again, please. Let's play the second Hornets call of Karl Anthony Towns going crazy.
He's never made a free throw as a pro, but he has now. I love leaking.
That's the Hornets winning.
I love leaky.
That's the Hornets winning that game, Stugotz. But let me give you some of the stats when I tell you that Karl Anthony Towns goes for 62. But was 2 for 10 in the fourth quarter. But was benched with 3 minutes left in a tie game because they're like, okay, enough of this. But did all the things wrong at the end of the game to lose the game. And Chris Finch, the coach of the Timberwolves, who, again, they're great. Chris Finch was pissed off after that game. Listen to this.
It was an absolute disgusting performance of defense and immature basketball all the way through the game. So it really didn't slip away. It had been there from the jump. So this is what happens when you have this type of approach.
It's kind of stunning to hear.
Especially with the graphic beside it of 62 points.
You don't usually lose the games when your guy has 62. In fact, Stugotz is going to dress as Larry Bird because Larry Bird once won one of those games when Michael Jordan scored 63, and afterward Larry Bird called Michael Jordan God.
And he was right. But Finch is upset about the defense. They gave up 128 to Charlotte. That's an embarrassment. They're the 1 seed in the West. I mean,
Charlotte has had before that game 9 wins on the season. That game was in Minnesota. Let's listen to Anthony Edwards. What was his stat line, Stugotz? Because Anthony Edwards didn't do much in the game. It was all about Karl Anthony Towns.
he had 9 points on 3 of 11 shooting.
And that's why they lose to Charlotte. And let's listen to Anthony Edwards after the game.
Like 20 in the fourth, and they just walked us down.
Just in terms of the focus that you guys had, did you see that kind of
We
go
weren't focused.
in terms of you didn't focus?
We wasn't focused from the jump at all. We was never focused. Cat just had a great night. We wasn't focused though.
He obviously started on fire. Did you think that the focus turned from winning the game to just trying to get him?
Yeah, for sure. I think, once he hit his first 6-7 shots, I think everybody was pretty much just trying to see him go get 100 points. I knew I was. So.
This team has been so mature for most of the year and handled these games.
Night.
Yeah. Why do you think that was the case?
I mean, he got hot. So I think all of us, 15 of us in here, 14 of us wanted to see him get 80 or whatever it was. So I think we're going to learn from it, though.
Was that hard for you to go from not shooting at all?
Hell yeah. Hell yeah. I'm mad. I'm pissed, but, I mean, it's all good. He career high. Congratulations to Big Cat. He definitely went for 60 for sure. So it's one of a kind performance. So appreciate him for giving me that.
A-Rod will figure it out.
We lost because he got hot.
That's going to be interesting to watch. Those are young players, and that needs to be Anthony Edwards' team. And maybe Karl Anthony Towns knows it, but not when he's going 10 for 15 from 3, he doesn't. We're going to get to Mike Ryan's rabid rage around Kyle Lowry. because he's become a very polarizing figure locally, and now he's poisoned. And I think poisoned publicly, or is poisoned publicly as a Hall of Fame player who's always been a pillar of professionalism. It seems like he doesn't want to be here and is unhappy. And this goes back a ways, man. Just since preseason, he's saying, I'm the point guard, and suppose like not really. And that the team is super interesting, the Heat, because they're 31-31, Stugotz, when Bam, Hero, and Butler are all healthy. But when Hero is out is when they make their big runs. Tyler Hero is an excellent basketball player, but they're only 31-31 when all three of their pieces are together, and the sample size isn't small anymore. Like, he's out enough and he's in enough that you're like, well, wait a minute, why is that happening? One of the reasons it's happening is because Kyle Lowry has been a spectacular and expensive disappointment. That was supposed to be the fourth piece. You're paying that guy to be your fourth best player on a team where that's your super three.
I mean, normally that would be a good thing, right? Kyle Lowry being your fourth best player.
It won a championship once when Kawhi Leonard was the best player.
And he was up there. He was second best.
No, Siakam was.
Siakam hadn't taken over that team yet. Like and Kyle Lowry was brought here to be the third best player.
Right.
And he dipped to levels that he's at now. I don't have rabid rage when it comes to Kyle Lowry, nor have I in quite some time, because I've been careful because of his comments on that. I didn't want to stoke the flames any, but it's good to see everyone's finally here now.
You've called him fat for years.
No, I haven't.
You avoided him in Tahoe. I mean, you avoided him.
Yeah, no, I think the Heat also called him fat. If you want to boil it down to what it actually is, when we're talking around a certain professionalism to approach the game, he had stuff going on in his life, and I don't feel like stoking the flames. But it's good to see everybody's over here now.
Once the team calls their player fat, then it's fair game for everyone. I feel
okay.
Like.
It should be noted.
It's the team.
Again,
I mean.
It didn't happen exactly that way, but it.
We need Kyle Lowry
Kinda
down
did.
here more than ever, I think. Now that UD's gone, you need that veteran champion on your team. And I could be wrong, but
that's Kevin Love.
He was an appendage, let's be real.
Stop it.
Come on.
An appendage?
Yeah, on that championship.
He literally had
Steph
the
Curry.
greatest stop.
He stopped
in
Steph
finals
Curry
history.
at the top of the three-point
Yeah, how about
line.
score 60 points in a game?
Okay.
A stop, what is that?
That's
Okay,
fair.
wow,
Okay,
you're plus
that's
2
fair.
on that? Okay,
That's
whatever.
fair. Okay, but it was at the end. Steph Curry was isolated and couldn't get past
Is
him.
this a
LeBron James won that
I mean,
championship.
UD
Or did he
literally
not?
said this weekend that Kevin Love is the guy that he reaches out to get the pulse of the team right now
You
because
have
he's
to
that
say.
guy.
Being nice.
Exactly
yeah.
right. You have to give him something because
We're
he's
gonna-
not really putting up numbers for the Heat.
This is how we're going to have this discussion.
Someone needs to be an honest Heat person here.
Right.
And I'm looking.
I agree.
As soon as football season's done, I'm not ready to step into that role quite yet.
That's a damn shame.
Once football season is there, after the All-Star break, really, because the NBA season hasn't started.
All right, we'll circle back
Bingo.
with you then.
Thanks. I'll check in with you guys in, what is it, 3 weeks from now?
Cool.
And then I'll be the
Please,
Heat guy if you guys
please.
would like.
No
but
worries.
I'm going to have to sign up for Bally's Plus because I have Hulu and they don't have that. And
Oh.
it's quite pricey. Can I
Gracious.
expense that?
Gracious of you to step aside.
I'm going to see if I could expense that.
Yes, you can. I am authorizing that expense.
Oh, that's
but
dangerous.
It's a shame.
Really?
That's a crazy precedent to
only.
set.
I wish
no.
you were more engaged so we can have this discussion, but, mighty big of you to step aside.
This is what I'm doing, Billy.
Yes.
I am authorizing that expense only for you, but it's in exchange for you finishing something, which is this character. I'm going to be the only one who's honest about the Heat after football. Want to see him every day. Want
Well,
to hear from
every
him.
day's a lot.
Well, no, I want to get my expense back. I want every day you're in here.
How about after every game?
Load management. How does that sound?
No, you're
How
all
about
right.
I'll
No,
do it as
no,
often as
no,
Roy does his
no.
post-game show?
If you want to set the precedent, I'm here to be honest about the Heat character is somebody I do want to fund and support, has my full backing, but has to actually work, not just watch games on an expense account. So I'd like to hear.
Well, the watching the game's the hard part, if I'm going to be honest with you. I could be here every day, as informed as I need to be, but the watching is really the commitment, you know?
I don't feel like anyone around here is as informed as they need to be on Kyle Lowry if Stugotz is shrugging his shoulders and saying as soon as the team gives you permission to fat shame someone, then we can all fat shame him.
He looks great. I would love to look like Kyle Lowry. I'd just like to say that. I'd also love to look like Jason Kelsey, if I'm going to be perfectly honest with you. I see these guys take their shirts off, and I'm like, whew, I would love if that was my body.
I will tell you that I found the one person who did not like what Jason Kelce did. My wife.
Really?
Called him a drunk idiot.
Also Skip Bayless.
Wow. He has to drink so much to get drunk, if we're going to be honest with you.
I said,
how could he be a drunk idiot?
Billy, I said yesterday that he has said that 20 beers puts him on 5 from 1 to 10 on drunk. Puts him on a 5, which is about like Greg Cody. I'm sorry Greg Cody is not here. He is under the weather, at least in part because he drinks 20 beers a night.
So what is the Kyle Lowry discussion we're trying to have?
It is an angry Heat fan base who is now done with him, and he's doing the social media thing of deleting links to friendship and separating himself from the team in a way that now has the Heat fan base. Well, if you're going to be bad and now you're going to be mad at us, the whole thing is poison, and you're talking about trading him for Terry Rozier and his expensive contract so that you can get his 37% shooting instead of Kyle Lowry's poison.
Well, Terry Rozier is having a career year offensively and would help in comparison to what Lowry has given them the last several weeks. The Kyle Lowry stuff is interesting with Instagram and stuff like that because I don't know that he ever followed some of these players that everyone's saying he unfollowed. Like if you go search in his Instagram, does he follow Jaime Jaquez Jr.? No. But I also haven't seen the proof that he ever followed him to begin with. So it's really more potentially just trying to make things look bad.
Jeremy,
but
was he taken out of his bio?
That's, again, I don't know if it was ever in there. That's kind of the thing, is everyone saying, things were taken out, but I don't know if it was ever there.
Lucy, hold on a second,
yeah,
Jeremy.
of course.
Just if you would, just because the reason I need to stop you is because you run on the political spectrum of what happens around here when it comes to Heat coverage. Mike Ryan and Parakeet Cortez have always owned the lane of being the most propaganda homer-ish. Mike Ryan, over the last couple of years, has soured on some things with the Miami Heat, and you have taken over the lane of being even more propaganda-ish because you're linked to the team, but also you're doing a new kind of journalism where you're obviously a fan, but obviously you also want to be impartial, but every syllable that comes out of your mouth sounds like it's biased. Every syllable.
I mean, that was just telling you a fact as opposed to saying he took stuff out of his bio.
That's
like, you
all
can
I'm
run
trying
with
to
the
do,
rumor
too.
if you want, but that's fine.
If I may call
That's
it
fine.
20, if I may call it 20,
Right.
Let's talk about the Kyle Lowry story as it's developed.
But you have 20 seconds to do it?
He was benched. He was taken out of the starting role, a starting role that he made a very big deal out of this offseason with the coaching staff that he needed. He absolutely needed this starting role. He did not want to come off the bench. He was benched. His post-game reaction to it was really salty and in a bit of a sea change because this stuff has been hanging over Kyle Lowry for quite some time. The Heat media all took the same note and said, okay, that's enough of that. This is toxic.
Marching
and now
orders.
a bunch of dirty laundry has been played out in the public space, and it's been reported that the Miami Heat are looking to move Kyle Lowry now.
And you got to get something for that contract because it's expiring. It is a valuable contract. And I've seen reports, and Jeremy, you help me here, wherever it is that your biases are and aren't. What's true about the reports that it might have gotten so poisonous already that they might not even want anything back for him? And this is not.
Well, how valuable is the contract?
It
then?
is. An expiring contract in that sport is absolutely valuable. Always.
But you don't trade him and get nothing in return. You hold on to the contract. then.
Unless things are so poisoned. I don't know what's true and what's not true here because I haven't made the calls to find out whether this stuff that's being rumored, which is, are they going to lose Kyle Lowry for nothing because everything's so poisoned that you can't get anything for him, when in that sport, an expiring contract, you can always get something for it?
I mean, so I think where that stems from is initially there were conversations in the offseason or even before that where originally it came from a Barry Jackson report that potentially Kyle Lowry could be bought out of his contract and that they wouldn't want to keep Kyle Lowry anymore. That's not the case, and that's not Barry's reporting anymore either. The conversation is either you trade him for some sort of value back or you hold on to him through the rest of the season as either someone who's a malcontent or someone who's bought back in because, hey, they're chasing something and Jimmy Butler's his friend, but he'll be on the bench at this point. Like the reality is once that switch was made and the lack of production that he's had, which he even acknowledged himself, hey, I haven't been as good as I would like to be over the last several weeks. that's what turned into this sort of poisonous situation. And the interesting part is, what are the Heat willing and able to do with the value of that expiring money? Because that's either going to be a trade with not a lot of other pieces, looking for a player potentially like Terry Rozier, a big contract that's, potentially longer money than they want to be paying, or moving multiple pieces to get a player like DeJounte Murray. The reporting now is that Murray, the Heat are sort of out of those sweepstakes. So you start to look around at players like potentially Bruce Brown.
That's the guy I want.
Yeah,
honestly, me too.
Bruce Brown would be a hell of a
not Rozier, not Rozier, and I know you need to make the contracts match up and everything else.
Not Murray. You want Bruce Brown?
Oh, Bruce Brown would be
Murray's
incredible.
a whole other
Murray's
conversation.
he's not an actual.
And there's a lot
player.
of people out there that say, "But we need a point guard in the traditional sense." Bruce Brown played point guard and kicked the Miami Heat's ass in the NBA Finals. And from a culture standpoint, I'll wear my bias on my sleeve quite literally today. Like he's a former K, and I love Bruce Brown, and I do not like Terry Rozier. If the trade is Kyle Lowry for Terry Rozier, what the Miami Heat are doing is moving my least favorite player of all time for my second least favorite player of all time. I am public in my desire to not ever have Terry Rozier on this team. Thank you.
But Kyle Lowry's led you guys to 2 straight Eastern Conference Finals, 1 NBA Finals, and here we are.
He's led us
Culture, loyalty,
No,
the Heat
the
family,
reason.
this,
If
that,
you
and
ask
all of a
anybody,
sudden,
he's led us there.
let's cut the cord here on Kyle Lowry.
Yes, he has not led us there. He's been an ankle weight.
We just retired a number for someone who wasn't contributing all that much and was on the bench for a long time.
Who was that?
Shut down Dirk
Who-
Nowitzki
wait,
in 2006.
wait a minute.
What are we doing?
No, this is. Hold on.
We're just saying,
we're
if we're
giving
gonna,
I'm
we're
the
gonna
biased
extend-
one.
You know
we're gonna
exactly what
extend-
we're doing.
We're
Dan
gonna
has given
extend
Billy license to do
asserting
this.
courtesy to some people. We should extend that to everybody, should we not? I mean, championship culture. He's the guy here. Back-to-back Eastern Conference Finals, 1 NBA Finals, and here we are all of a sudden.
Couple of
Marching
things.
orders come out, and all the media's turning on him after they went and were fat-shaming him years ago. It's just despicable.
When you use the verb led, it is doing a lot of heavy lifting there to say that Kyle Lowry led the team.
You know, Dan, it's not all that. It doesn't all show up in the stat sheets.
Yep.
You know what I mean? Leadership appears in many different ways.
Thank you, Billy. And this is how I'm going to lead. The Miami Heat character that gets an expense account to watch these games. No, I'm not going to ask you to leave. I'm not going to ask you to leave. Where are you going? I'm not asking you to leave. No.
I understand why you would think that.
I
though.
understand. Yes, you interrupted
Trying
me.
to be proactive.
You interrupted me enough there that I understand why you would think that I was going to send you away there. No, I'm going to promote you with an.
I don't know about this.
No, yeah. Well, now we're here.
Financially?
Now, yes, by getting an expense account to watch these games, and the Heat truth-telling character has to talk in the voice that he just talked when he talked about Udonis Haslem. That's
I
how
said
you.
no such
that's how
name.
you tell the truth.
I said no such name.
There.
After the Super Bowl and after All-Star game.
I mean, he did have some nice games last year against the Knicks in the postseason. He did. Lowry had some nice games.
And sometimes when people are down, they just need a little supporting. You know what I mean? To get them right back on track. And that's not what we're doing here.
I also was defending his first 30 games this season, where he was a contributor because he was simply out there leading a bunch of these young guys while Jimmy, Bam, and Tyler missed games. Kyle Lowry's been an important piece to this team over the last few years. It's just over the last several weeks, last month, his play has really gone south. The attitude has gone south as well. And no, he wasn't anything that he was supposed to be when they traded for him.
Who among us hasn't gotten in a rut?
Jesus Christ. No, the last month has been the issue with Kyle Lowry.
I just said that it wasn't. I just said he was not everything that he was supposed to be over the last several years. But just because he wasn't that doesn't mean that there wasn't a piece that he contributed to the team. Like
It's the worst trade. It's the worst trade in Miami Heat history. Wow. He's not been a good player for them, and it is fitting that the Miami Heat's relationship with him has become so toxic that even his trade is going to be a diminishing return.
Oh man, Lucy, you look great.
Thank you. I feel great.
I mean, it is. I want to extend the 80s costume. I want to also expense more costumes for Lucy that allow her to dress more 80s more often.
I'm going to do 70s too. I think I would be better for the 70s because I know more about that decade. I don't know shit about the 80s. Trickle down economics. That's all I know.
Pablo Torre is about to join us. But Stugotz, I want to apologize to the audience for all the interesting basketball last night, and we gave him 15 minutes of Kyle Lowry. I would encourage everyone viewing this on Max, YouTube, DraftKings Network, or listening to this to find Pablo Torre Finds Out. Stugotz, I have been very moved by a number of people that I respect, really smart people who pull me aside and are like, man, that podcast is unusually smart and good and has a wide range of topics.
God bless football.
Pablo Torre Finds Out is the thing that they ask me about, less so about God bless football.
Weird, because I think Pablo only has one award and we have two, and we're nominated for a third. Voting ends
That
this
hurts.
week, by the way.
Yeah.
That does hurt.
What
But you should vote
hurts?
for God Bless Football. Just that I've been out-awarded in this company by you and Stu.
Yeah.
It hurts, but I respect it because it is an excellent show that you guys do.
If it makes you
Sincerely.
feel better, you've out-resourced us by a lot.
It does make me feel better, actually. I'm mostly here for the resources.
So Pablo Torre Finds Out is something that I encourage you to listen to, and something that I wanted to talk to Pablo about. I will tell people, and this has been fascinating, the business of podcasting is really interesting to me for obvious reasons. But Stugotz, you may have noticed, like, this is a really interesting thing that has happened where the space has been occupied for a long time by Joe Rogan and Bill Simmons and Pardon My Take and us, and all of those people either are white or look white. And now Shannon Sharp is here to create disruption, and Cameron as well is here. And Cameron doesn't have to follow any rules about anything. He can do whatever he wants, and it's part of the reason I like that podcast. It's part of the reason that I support that podcast, and it's super interesting to watch other people come into this space with different voices and carve out their space. It's one of the reasons that we signed up with All the Smoke, because we want to align ourselves with a wide diversity of opinion and voices.
That and the smoke. I mean,
that too.
Yeah.
And Cameron is doing something that we have thought about doing around here and rejected, because you have to have some standards, I believe, and mine might be diminished, but not going to platform a murderer in order to get his football analysis. And so I've decided not to get the clicks that would get, because it will inevitably get clicks. But with all of that as precursor, I have known O.J. Simpson since my earliest sports childhood memories. Stugotz, it's the only tickets that I could get to games. My father didn't have enough money, were the bad seats when Buffalo would come into town.
You've known of O.J. Simpson. You didn't know him growing up, did you?
No, but
Okay.
I've been observing him for a long time, and I've known him since. Like, I've talked to him several times.
Making it sound like you're Cato over here.
Okay,
I mean,
I'm not Cato.
Okay.
I have been in his company a number of different times, and what I've never seen, because he's so calculated, so rehearsed, so careful, what I've never seen is him bare his teeth and show you the killer the way that he did when he was talking to Cameron.
You think I'm gonna shoot the fair one with Ben? You out your mind. Get 6'10". I'm going straight. The shit that I'm gonna do is ridiculous. I'm from the danger zone. You gotta Google that shit. Oh, go Google Lenox Avenue, the danger zone. Go Google Lenox Avenue, the danger zone, 139th Street. See what we do for a living. And when you come back next week, you'll be like, "Oh, Cam, you from over there?"
I'm from San Francisco Trail Hill Projects. I spent some time in some other kind of projects. I spent some time in some other kind of projects too.
Let me tell you something about that real quick.
I can tell you this. You ain't never heard nobody with me.
How me and you get in the beef? I'm not beefing with you. How me and you get in the beef? We're talking about Ben Simmons.
I'm going to help you with Ben.
All right, there we go. That's my man.
That is as close as I've heard O.J. Simpson come to saying, I've killed two people. Pablo, your thoughts?
Well, then in that book where he was like, but if I did, this is how I would have gotten away with it.
He's still looking for the person who did it, right?
On the golf course.
Pablo, your thoughts on all of that?
Yeah, so first off, there is no show that I enjoy clicking on more than the Cam and Mace show. It is what it is. It is my guiltiest pleasure. I love it. Cam is hilarious. My favorite part of that video, which I had to revisit before talking to you guys today, though, to Dan's point, is how that interview starts, because what Mace says, so Cam, for people who are familiar, Cameron, Killa Cam, Mace addresses Cam by saying, yo, Killa, I wanted to ask you something going forward at the beginning, and just watch and listen to OJ as he hears someone address someone else by the word Killa. If you could play that video. I don't know if the video department has it.
Yes.
But that would be tremendous.
Yo, Killer, I wanted to ask you something before we go forward.
Play it again, please.
That's great.
Yo, Killer, I wanted to ask you something before we go forward.
And that's a confession.
I mean, that is as close you will get to OJ just being like, I can be myself here, right? And so that show, I mean, Dad, on Pablo Torre Finds Out, one of my first ideas was to find out truly the identity of the guy who held the phone for OJ when he's taping those videos from the golf course, like doing his fantasy football talk. And it was decided that that was too dangerous, right? Like, are we really going to like do an OJ thing? Are we really going to tell the story of OJ and make light of it? And so I am just glad that through proxy, through Cam and Mace, I can actually indulge in, I think, a genuine fascination that everybody has stayed away from. Like men's magazines, GQ, Esquire, you know this, Dan. Like an OJ profile by now would have been done if not for the whole allegedly murdering people thing. And the only place he can be platformed with that level of intimacy and welcome, obviously, is going to be on a pseudo-satirical but actually real sports show hosted by two former rappers.
Oh, but to watch OJ's ascent through the labyrinth, Stugotz, the OJ Simpson documentary that our friend Ezra Edelman made, the funniest thing in it was OJ Simpson pivoting after all of the shit came his way, and he's wearing a dashiki in a church because now he's going to be maximum black guy when earlier in the documentary what you're seeing is him saying, I'm not black. I'm OJ. I can fit in any place. And now this begins his rehabilitation because he is charming, Pablo. Like this is normalizing OJ Simpson now. Is OJ Simpson going to be allowed a reinvention because media standards have crumbled and these guys don't have to listen to media standards and they can get more popular and get rewards? Stugotz has been trying to get OJ Simpson on God Bless Football for 3 years.
Yep, every week. Mm-hmm.
Look, I've been trying to get Ricky Williams to connect me to OJ. He agreed at one point, apparently. Like Ricky had known OJ from back in the day as, I guess, running backs club or something, whether that's real or figurative. And so I have been trying to get to him too. But the question of like, will he ever be held to account? You know, I think one thing that's safe to say, as much as I love that show that we're playing clips from, they're not exactly deposing OJ Simpson.
Oh no,
right?
but Pablo, as the media crumbles, that's the place people are going to go. Places like that are where they can be interviewed safely.
But deposing OJ, like we still want that. We expect them to do that. I just want to ask them who's going to win the AFC NFC Championship game. I mean, that's deposing.
Well, it just feels like at a certain point, right? There are questions that he has never actually admitted answers to. And to Mike's point, he did write a book in which he basically said, if I were to admit these answers, here's how it would go. So maybe it's settled law. Maybe you're right on that, Stugotz. But it just feels like the question is, when do any of us feel icky? And I think if you are in anything resembling the business of accountability and news, you can't ignore that.
Pablo, I think that loses now. I think the currency now is attention. Doesn't matter how you get it. And people hate the media. They don't care about the media standards. They're not the average person standards. I think that loses.
They also care about catching people on their own hypocrisies. They love that. And platforming O.J. Simpson while other shows take other moral stances, including this one, that would be quite the hypocrisy. There's reasons why you don't platform O.J. Simpson, or at least this show doesn't editorially. It's a bad decision. It's nasty. We've all, for the most part, have reached general consensus that he got away with murder. And in the civil trial, he was found responsible for it. So there is an exploration here that's interesting as to why that show can do it, and the way that certain people project standards from people that approach media from a more conventional space as opposed to an unconventional background. But let's be clear, O.J. Simpson isn't on other shows because O.J. Simpson is believed to have murdered two people.
Pablo?
Yeah, it's funny. I text Ezra clips from that show. Ezra Edelman, clips of that show and clips of OJ, and he's just not interested at this point. I'm trying to bait him back in because Ezra, what he did with OJ Made in America, the greatest documentary I've ever seen, is he did a write around. OJ refused to participate, right? So this question of also like, this is the larger picture of media, is that if you don't give a shit, and I credit in many ways Cam and Mace's ability or just lack of need to give a shit. If you don't give a shit, you can platform whoever you want. And if you are trying to do something that tells a cohesive story that is fair to all of the parties who have ever been impacted by this person, well, it's a lot like, do we carry Donald Trump's press conferences live on CNN? That was a debate happening this week inside of CNN's newsrooms. And everyone's like, well, it's something people would watch. It's newsworthy on its face because people would want to watch it because it's something that is definitionally new. But do we do this because we have to consider victims, whether that be victims in a literal sense or people who are being slandered and lied about, who are being impacted by this guy's rhetoric?
But Pablo, the decision that's being made when capitalism is near media, one of the victims is going to be the media because CNN, if it doesn't show Trump, loses the viewers that it gets with Trump. CNN is dying, at least in part, because it doesn't cover Trump.
Well, this is what I want to make the distinction about here is that it's very easy for the people to say, we want everything. We can actually handle the truth. I hear Vivek Ramaswamy, my former classmate, who's now vociferously endorsing Trump, say this all the time. I am here for truth. We can handle it. And in all of these platforms that are not actual newsrooms, and I group weirdly Cam and Mace into this group too, alongside everybody who likes to put on Trump and do it without any sort of standard or inspection journalistically. You don't want truth either, right? Because you're not asking the hardest questions. The difference between CNN and them, though, is that CNN has a newsroom that has standards that are meant to say, Dan, in an increasingly unprofitable world, we care about whether the truth in that journalistic sense is being served. And so it's really easy to run against those institutions that are scoldy and moralistic.
Pablo, the truth
and
is
censoring.
the truth is dying, Pablo. The truth. Like, what are you talking about?
You're criticizing a show that you yourself enjoy. Like, think about what you're doing there. I just want to be entertained. I don't care about anything.
But still,
I just want to be entertained. I feel like media right now needs a commissioner. And I am volunteering to be the commissioner of sports media.
Okay, put it on the poll, Choo-Choo. Should Stugotz be the commissioner of sports media?
The guy that just admitted that he wanted to have OJ on for 3 years.
Look, I fully understand the entertainment impulse. I want it. I'm guilty of it. All I'm saying, though, is that those people, whether you're Pat McAfee or Cam or whoever else wants to put on a Trump rally uncensored with no editing or no footnoting, you're just not interviewing. You're not doing news. And so you just got to be very clear about what it is and what it isn't. And all we have, Dan, as journalists, or the smoldering embers of what journalists used to be inside of us, is to say, here's the degree of difficulty we accept because there is a standard we want to hold ourselves to. And it's easier and more fun to go the other way. And I myself will click on that
cares about
stuff.
Pablo. Nobody cares about the standard. Like,
we
no
have
one's more
vocabulary.
No one is more self-obsessed about being interested in the media standard than the media. And the standard's dying. The standard's losing. It's losing to capitalism, and truth is losing. And no one cares about what our fucking standards are.
If you guys care about the truth, we can talk about Paul Pierce later.
Oh, jeez.
We need to do that. Let's get Pablo out of here. I love that we had Pablo on.
The next Walter Cronkite, Paul Pierce, bring him in. Yeah, please.
We are not talking Embiid with Pablo. Pablo Torre finds out.
He's the MVP of the league.
Thank you for being
greatest player we've ever seen.
We'll find out if he wins a championship or not.
There it is. See you later, Pablo.
Goodbye.
I cannot help but smile at the way that the universe laughs at me because Stugotz's standards are going to win.
I mean, who's going to Cameron to get a serious O.J. Simpson interview? Just entertain me. Cameron, as the commissioner of the media, you're my guy. Just keep entertaining, man. Seriously.
That's kind of the thing that you and Pablo are. It's weird about the argument is that you want Cameron and Mace to be held to the same standard as actual journalists when no one's turning to them for journalism, and I don't think they themselves consider themselves
Well,
it's like going to the Colbert Report for actual news at the time.
They are funny for a number of reasons. One of them being right at the top of my list, how badly they want to talk about sports, and I'm not sure if they're joking by putting on suits to do so just because everyone has put the sports and sports jackets on ESPN. They don't need to be wearing suits, and I don't know if they're joking or not.
I want to dissect one aspect of what Billy just said. I don't think Dan is actually saying they shouldn't have O.J. Simpson
I'm not.
on. I think he's using them as a means to explain why this show doesn't have O.J. Simpson on.
No, I'm not.
And what makes this show different from that, and it's not a bad thing necessarily.
Look, this is something that gets me accused of virtue signaling. I don't know what the standard should be. I will say that this particular standard that is cherished by me is harder and harder to defend against what Stugotz is saying. Stugotz is saying, just entertain me, clown. Make me a bicycle clown. And that is what sports should be. And Stugotz, for all of what my alleged principles are, the people have voted. They want their sports to stay sports. They don't want some of this other shit. My morals or anyone's morals around just entertain me, clown. And I get it. It becomes hard to fight in that environment when we get used as useful idiots for the far right as tools because go woke, go broke. And I see the whole shift changing, the whole landscape where Stugotz, this is what I'm watching. Football, stand for something. You got all the money in the world. Stand for something. Please stand for something at this difficult time of division when you have actual leadership. No, we're going to blackball Kaepernick, and as soon as our star, Patrick Mahomes, says we shouldn't do that, then we're going to say, never mind about that. But Kaepernick's not going to play, and Jerry Jones is going to win. Then go to basketball. Basketball's so woke. What, you're not going to play after George Floyd? There go the ratings. Down, 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 down. No matter how interesting last night was, no matter how interesting the stories were. Baseball, bunch of guys who never take a stand for nothing. The biggest controversies they have is the ethnic young guys are coming in and they're being too flamboyant. But baseball players don't think about much of anything other than baseball. Baseball doesn't stand for anything. Move the All-Star game. We don't know if it's right or wrong. Let's move the All-Star game out of North Carolina because it seems like something to do. But we don't take political stances. And then I don't need to explain hockey to you. But what happens when MMA gets the power? What happens with MMA gets the power? You see a lane for 10 years ago, Dana White did take stances on what his people could say. Now he lets everyone run wild. Why? Because look at the climate in this country. So that's what happens when media standards get diminished. All those other sports got to collectively bargain. You got to partner with the players. You need your sponsors. MMA can do whatever the hell it wants because it's got a sponsor that has to rent. Disney, with all the FU money in the world, has to borrow whatever Dana White is selling, and what he's selling is getting stronger because it's being platformed in the mainstream. So what happens with you don't want your politics with your sports? Those politics end up getting more and more power, and now you've empowered Dana White and Trump next to each other at the Republican National Convention, and their people are armed. They're armed. And now what? Now we're doing it in the silly playground of O.J. Simpson and Cameron. But when you diminish these standards and when the media, as checks and balances, cannot speak truth to those standards lose, we get into these conversations where it's just entertain me. Just put Trump on CNN. Just put the Republican candidate on. It's news. You're suppressing him. You're censoring him by holding on to your standards, CNN, as he knocks you down and fake news and he calls you failing and he wins while trying to stay out of jail. That's what happens. And so what do you do with it? I become rambling, man. That's what happens. The Cameron and Mason, O.J. Simpson, a fun conversation is me just ranting with bad tone.
I mean, they're just talking about pigskin. Just a couple of guys getting together, talking about football. Here's how I look at it, Dan, okay? Because it feels like every day might be the last day. There's climate change. They're discovering things in outer space. We have no idea which way is what. I mean, we don't. We have no idea. All the things I learned growing up, I now question. Why? Because they're telling me to question everything they taught me when I was growing up. I don't know which day is going to be the last day. I have no idea, but it feels like any day could be the last day. I just want to laugh all the way through. That's it.
Fair enough. Put it on the poll, Juju, at Le Batard Show.
It's why I smoke 6 packs a day, and a little gummy when I get home. I mean,
does it feel like every day is the last day at Le Batard Show?
Have you noticed this, though? Like, all the things they taught us growing up, they're changing. The laws of physics, there's certain eye drops that they're recalling now. You know how much Visine I've shoved in my eyes? I mean, Jesus.
Yes. It does seem
it's dangerous.
It does seem like everything.
Is Pluto a planet? I mean, we go back and forth on that one, Dan. Where do we stand right now on this? Ask Cameron.
It is a confusing time. Let's have Cameron ask OJ where we stand on this. Stugotz, I think it's entertaining too. I don't want any of this to get aggregated and suggest for a moment that I'm criticizing that show, which I welcome into the space, and I hope it succeeds because it's a fun-ass show. And those guys are fun to watch. And that can be what the new media is. I don't want to appear threatened by it, Stugotz, because I'm not threatened by it. I support what those guys are doing.
They have different standards than you have. They have different standards than Pablo has. You guys wouldn't put OJ on your show, even though I was shocked to hear that Pablo was going after OJ Simpson to come on the show. But you guys have different standards. Journalism means something to you, and I understand why. It doesn't mean as much to the rest of us.
I understood, Stugotz, but I would simply say to you, the reason that it matters to me above all others is because it's the checks and balances on democracy not falling a fucking part. Like, it's okay, it does. I've noticed it doesn't matter to anybody. I've noticed fake news is a platform run by a con artist.
Talking to guests and doing the best he can. But when it's time for grief and no one understands, why, like Dan the Rambling Man. Well, he's talking about discomfort in California as he tries to introduce us to all the smoke. But he's taking 4 minutes to get to the point. Mike wants him to bring it home. Lord, Dan was born a rambling man, talking to guests and doing the best he can. But when it's time for grief and no one understands, why, like Dan the Rambling Man.
Why do you think Valerie was upset with Jason Kelsey? I mean,
that was very
weird. That's a weird one.
Yeah, we never got back to that.
Idiot, dude.
Yeah.
That's very harsh language.
Did he make it all about himself? Is that did he steal some of Travis's thunder?
Normally, when a dude jumps over sections of seating with his shirt off, with beers in his hands, anyone at that event would usually judge and say, "Look at this drunk idiot." But when it's Jason Kelsey, it's really funny because he's famous. He's uber famous.
He also picked, when he jumped down, he picked up a little girl that had a sign for Taylor Swift and, called her over. So it was sweet. The whole thing was just, vibes were high. I don't know what the problem is.
It is unruly fan behavior, though. And if that person is not Jason Kelsey, there's someone sending a text.
I wish that all of
Section
Buffalo would have
212.
texted and would be like, sweet 273, get this drunk idiot out of here.
But in that stadium, it's accepted, right? Amongst that fan base, that's what they want.
Badge of honor.
Yeah, it really is.
Do we have the video of what was happening pregame at that stadium? I don't know why a Lions fan was going through a table, but the Bills Mafia, they always jump through tables. That's their thing. And
Kelsey went out there and hung out with them?
Well, no. There was just this other fan. Although Jason Kelsey did look like he might have. This is another fan.
No, he did. He actually did, Mike.
Yeah, this is another fan being thrown through a flaming table, and the fire did not go out. It stayed on his ass for quite some time. The fire did some help.
Can I ask you guys a political question?
Really?
About the rules? Yeah. Oh, wow. So we've done this segment with Carl and we've joked about, we should have OJ on. But like a person that we actually have talked to him about is having Kamala Harris on because he used to work with her. And we think that it'd be funny to have the Vice President of the United States picking football games.
With K-Funk.
Yeah, with K-Funk, exactly. So if we do that with Gordy, then like as it's an election year, so then do we have to like extend an invite to like Vivek or whoever
whoever the running mate.
The running mate
you
is
have
gonna
to
be.
you have to
even
offer.
on picks.
Like how does that work?
Generally,
Ronnie D.
Yeah, equal time.
Ronnie D's here.
They have to pick
picks.
the same games, the same amount of games, equal time, the whole deal, all the way through.
You know, Ronnie D, if he comes on, he's going to be there every single week, like it or not.
Kamala Harris, K-Funk, and Gordy Gronkowski.